r/AskReddit. What is the quickest way you've seen a friend fuck up their life? Getting pregnant in college because she was acting stupid with a guy who already had one kid he couldn't take care of. Edit. Everything ended up okay, I guess. She wanted the father to have a say, and he's a genuinely good guy, even if a little immature. At the time, he was pursuing a master's in political science, and I went to visit shortly before the kid was born. I dragged him out on the porch and got in his face and told him that if he ruined my friend's life or the kid's life with his selfishness, I would kill him. He put school on hold a few months later and went to work, making about $70K a year at his dad's oil company, and is doing a good job there. I'm proud that he turned it around. My friend gave up a managerial job when he took this job, though, and she and I had a heart-to-heart over the phone, and I reminded her that if she would keep the job, they would make enough money to put their kid in a great Montessori school, buy a house, etc. She ended up quitting anyway to finish up school, BS in biology, and is just about done now. They did end up being able to buy and house the kiddo, is doing great. But they got lucky that baby daddy's father has a company where the dad can work. I wanted to help these guys and even ended up buying them a bunch of stuff before she was born. Stroller, pack and play, high chair, etc. I had this teammate I lived with back in minor hockey, great guy, little wild but was a pretty solid dude. Thing is, he came from a pretty rough background and was kinda obsessed with the gangster life. I was a little too, not as extreme, but I was basically his best friend for the year we played together. Anyway, he got drunk and lit an apartment building on fire. He killed a guy, his wife and young daughter. He did about 7 years for manslaughter. He gets out and ends up murdering some kid mistakenly through some botched drug dealers in Canada. So I guess he's gonna get out someday, but I'm sure by that time he'll be lost to the system. Anyway, be careful who you emulate and act like. Pretty soon that becomes you. Not my friend but myself, and not something I did but almost did. Short backstory: I was extremely shy and depressed as a teenager. I did not fit in at all. So before I graduated high school, I enlisted in the Navy under the delayed entry program. Right before I left, I went to prom with a random girl who ended up having the hots for me, first real girlfriend. So now I didn't want to leave, but went to boot camp and A school, technical school. During my leave from A school en route to my first ship, Kitty Hawk, home ported in Yokosuka, Japan, I had a month off back home and summarily lost my shit because I didn't want to leave this girl behind. At one point I was determined to run off in the woods and hide. So the night I had to leave, I broke down and said I wasn't leaving. My father came to talk to me and told me he didn't want to see my face again if I didn't do what I signed up to do. I became suicidal at this point, and my girlfriend decided I needed to go to the hospital. I go to the ER and this nurse, male, takes me to the back room. He gives me a talk basically saying, you're about to throw your life away for a girl. Girls are easy to find, and you are about to go on an adventure. I don't know how, but this guy pumped me up. I was like, fuck this, I'm going. So random nurse guy, thank you for saving me from a great fuck up. I got to Japan and lost interest in this girl in like 2 months. Yeah, I'm crazy and a huge asshole. Not a friend, my only brother. Golden boy, handed everything on a silver platter. Basically a prince in our family, golf scholarship, lots of friends, chicks throwing themselves at him. Besides the fact that he's a supreme prick, nasty person who acts like a douchebag 24/7. Started drinking heavy at 15. Seriously cheap ass nasty $3 a pint booze. Which is nonsense. We come from money. Buy some good shit and stop chain smoking menthols. But whatever. Hit it like a champ until 2015. Full liver failure a week after his 29th birthday. Begs my parents for a second chance at life. He needs help. He wants to live, blah blah blah. Here's the fast part. My parents managed to get him a full liver transplant 2 months in, which would have been impossible without the contribution of mine and my sister's inheritance, because addicts aren't really high on the list for transplants, and he barely survived. Rehab, 12 steps at AA, the whole 9. Mayo Clinic started calling. Hey, asshole isn't coming to his mandatory. Are you rejecting the organ? You don't deserve appointments. Mom forces him to go. Drops dirty for coke, booze and weed. He is now dead to me and most of my family. Motherfucking garbage. Has 4 years or less to live, and my mom is basically a slave because he cries that he needs her and she's too weak to toss his ass in a home. That liver could have gone to 8 people who maybe gave a shit about their life. In my mind he is a murderer who straight up stole the second chance at life of non-substance abusers. I hate him. Edit asterisk I'm a female lol not a dude. Inheritance was left by my grandfather and my parents cashed out mine and my sister's via mom, being executor of GP's estate. My parents have their own goddamn money, but spent ours instead. My sister and I have always had jobs. Both of us graduated from college and didn't ask for handouts like my prick brother. I have kids and am married to an active duty enlisted TSGT. We aren't wealthy at all. I'm not mourning money I didn't physically have yet. It's the principle of it. She told us after the fact. My brother is a worthless piece of shit, verbally abusive yet charming, highly addictive personality, manipulative dickbag. Pretty sure he's a sociopath. Yes, you can buy an organ. Everything has a price tag. No, I don't have to tolerate his dumbass existence on the virtue of being blood. It wears on my soul to even contemplate being in the same state as him. I plan on seeing him again at his funeral. I had to hold my mom up literally prior to transplant and call our priest for last rites. I then had to arrange his cremation because she couldn't do it. Plan his funeral while she wept silently, wringing her hands and praying under her breath. It was horrifying to see my mom hurt like that. I watched her age and fade while he was in a coma. Years just falling off her life. The heartbreak was unfathomable to behold. It was devastating. Her hair turned white at 52 from sorrow, and he survives to drink again and do cocaine after he basically killed himself with cheap booze in the first place. Fuck him right in his stupid face. I would end him myself if I could. He just isn't worth the prison time. There was a girl in my PhD program whose dad died a few months before she was about to take her comprehensive exams. Basically the halfway point in a PhD. Obviously that's a tough thing to go through, but her dad was also well into his 80s and had been in hospice for several months, so it's not like it struck out of the blue. However, despite knowing that it was coming from a long way off, she still had a complete meltdown after his death. She made absolutely no effort to study for her exams and instead would go out partying every single night. Prepping for comps basically means studying non-stop from morning to night every single day for about 3 months straight. During all this time though, she kept posting status updates about how she needed to finish her PhD for the sake of her dad, who had been so excited that she'd be the family's first doctorate. She failed the exams, but school policy allowed her to have a second shot at them in the next semester. However, she learned nothing from her previous experience and continued to go out partying every night without studying, while still talking about honoring her dad's legacy by finishing her PhD. And then, for reasons no one ever understood, she started turning on all of her friends in the program. She never gave any of us reasons why. She suddenly just refused to talk to any of us. She also divorced her husband and basically fell in with a group of guys who she kept running into during her evenings out and refused to interact with anyone other than these guys. Not too surprisingly, she failed her comps again and was kicked out of the program. All of a sudden after that, honoring her father's legacy by finishing her PhD wasn't a priority anymore. Instead, her Facebook was filled with rants about how everyone in the program, including all of the former friends who she had cut ties with, was out to get her, or never supported her, or never truly cared about her. And I can tell you that these accusations caused a great deal of heartbreak amongst these friends. Suddenly she was overjoyed to be freed from all the haters in our program. And I should add that, while all of this was going on, she was posting new photo albums of her out partying with this new circle of her friends every single day, like 50 or 60 new club pics waiting for me on my feed at breakfast every morning. I don't think even the most self-absorbed teen girls post even a tenth as many pics as she was. I wound up blocking her just because of how tedious it was getting. At some point though she unfriended me and everyone else in the program except, weirdly, for the department's student secretary. Last I heard she was working as a secretary herself and dating some guy from this new circle of friends of hers, and that nothing has really changed. He killed his bully in middle school. He was always taunted, insulted, assaulted both physically and mentally, mugged on a daily basis, and nearly had his neck broken. The school wouldn't do shit to the degenerates. The school wasn't in a bad part of town but it had some really shitty pricks. One day the dick measuring king decides that day would be the day he would try and ruin my friend's day for good by trying to break his knees with a bat. As my friend goes up to bat he gets ready to hit ball. The pitcher, not affiliated with the group of thugs, throws it too far in and forces my friend to duck, which saved his head from both the ball and the bat the guy swung from behind. My friend noticed this, turns around and pulls an MLB swing that connected with the guy's skull, completely shattering it. He dropped dead where he stood. Suddenly the coaches tackle my friend to the ground and called the police. My friend was arrested and charged for murder. To this day I don't know if he's alive or dead, but all I know is that if the joke of a school system would have done something, that he wouldn't have had to stand up for himself. It's complete bullshit that the very people who preach about how they support anti-bully measures are the same who stand by and do nothing until something tragic happens. Gary was a nice guy who would help anyone in need. Hell, this guy even helped carry me to the nurse when my own group of thugs blinded me with sand and dirt when they tripped me. Fuck the school system, and fuck the people who act like he's the criminal when he had to deal with 4 years of torture. I made a friend in app calculus. This kid was a straight math genius, slept through every class because it was too simple for him. He would help me with homework and test prep. I still got a 1, he got a 5, and could have done it in his sleep. The year ends, we go off to college. He is at Arizona College, studying engineering. I got to visit him in March. We play basketball, share a newfound love of marijuana, generally just have a good time. I go home at the end of the week. 2 weeks later, he is in a restaurant bathroom. He can't tell if someone is in the stall, so he bends over to do the shoe check. At that very moment, the stall door opens and strikes him in the temple, knocking him unconscious. He begins suffering massive headaches. His personality changes from sweet to aggressive. His doctors prescribe painkillers and psychotropics. He gets hooked. While driving under the influence of his medication, he causes a head-on collision with a 16-year-old girl and her father, killing them both. His parent post bail. He goes home and blows his brains out. Top of the world to suicide in 3 months. I miss you, I suck. Knew a kid who was hanging out with his friends in his dad's study. He pulled out his dad's handgun from a hiding spot and was playing around, pointing it at things and acting cool. His friends told him to knock it off and quit being stupid. To show them that he knew what he was doing and it was safe, he took out the magazine, put the gun to the roof of his mouth, and pulled the trigger, only he forgot to empty the chamber and blew the back of his head off in front of his friends. The saddest part of all of it was watching the aftermath as his friends, who watched it happen, and his family, who blamed his father, destroyed themselves trying to cope with what his stupidity brought about. Had a second-generation immigrant friend from China. Was a really smart kid, loved drawing, but kinda shy. He got high once, and his parents literally disowned him. Went to live with his dealer, who was unfortunately not just a casual pot grower, but was connected to organized crime, and shortly my friend owed a ton of rent money to violent criminals. They basically owned him, forced him to start dealing to pay his ever-growing debts and to reward good behavior. Gave him free drugs, meth, cocaine. He tried them all. Kid was smart though. Despite everything, he avoided addiction. Landed a contract labor job in northern Canada. When he came back, the gang was in recession due to police efforts, and he cut and ran with what he earned. That shit kills most people. He came out streetwise. Edit, I found him on Facebook just now. Not gonna post personal info, but he's out in BC now with a baby kid and a wife. His album goes from pictures of his childhood in cadets, to drawings, to a picture of him with a bandana over his face, to a picture of a cigar half hanging from his mouth. The words "today's art has been cancelled" to police activity. Then after a few more hood selfies and drawings, it shows a ton of pictures of him out in the mountains and snowboarding with friends. I shot him a message. We'll see if he's interested in doing an AMA or something. One of my best girlfriends stopped seeing her therapist and taking her medication for anxiety and panic attacks. Ignored all of our attempts to tell her she needed to remain in treatment. Went out clubbing 3 to 4 times a week to avoid thinking about her problems. Spent too much money, then exacerbated her anxiety when she couldn't pay her bills. She would then go out to forget about the fact that she couldn't pay her bills, and the circle began again. She failed out the last quarter of 4 years at university. She literally just had to get through that quarter to get a degree. Didn't do it. She's doing okay now, but to advance in her career, she would need a master's degree, and that's just not gonna happen. Heroin. Went from a pretty smart kid to dead in less than a year. Edit 2:37 AM. I really underestimated how common of an issue this was. I mean, I get that it is common, but my inbox got nuked with responses and PMs from people. I'm both glad that this is getting actual attention from people and sad that this is common to the point that this many people can relate to this outcome. Edit 5:44 AM. Redditors, you guys have seen and experienced a lot of hell either in your personal lives or through your friends suffering because of this drug. Take care of yourselves and seek help if you need it. Don't feel like you are struggling alone. There are a lot of people who have been changed by this, and I'm sure we can help each other out in life. Someone once told me that you're never formally an addict. If you've stopped using, you're a recovering addict because the call of your vice is always there. She's a recovering crack addict. She told me that relapse is always around the corner and that the desire is always there. Everything is a gateway drug for her. She dabbled in opiates too, so she doesn't fuck with pain medication. The worst thing she'll touch is cigarettes. She doesn't even drink. All of that, and she's been sober 2 decades. But she still doesn't say she's a former addict. She still participates in Narcotics Anonymous. She openly admits to her past. She's a chill lady. She wasn't trying to serve as a cautionary tale. She just told me some of her experiences while I twisted her dreadlocks. There are a lot of people saying similar things as I'm about to, but I feel the need to share my experience. I'm a former heroin addict. I recently passed a year clean. I feel like I can say former addict because I feel no desire to go anywhere near it. I've been tested by unknowingly walking into tempting situations, walked away with only a stronger resolve. There are a lot of people out there who have had success with the AA/NA model, and I don't want to downplay how effective it can be for some people. It did not and does not work for me. I have a lot of gripes with the model they present, most notably being that I'm powerless over my addiction and that once I'm an addict I will always be and must be free of all mind-altering substances. I'm not powerless over my addiction. I'm powerful over my addiction and every other aspect of my life. My addiction is not some mysterious overlord that I must concede power to. It is an obstacle like any other. It is a temptation that I know can rapidly get out of hand. Passing it off as something I cannot or could not control is simply giving me an excuse to relapse. I needed to acknowledge that I made the choice to pick drugs over my responsibilities. I also do not agree with the concept that I must be free of all drugs. I have never had a problem with any other drug besides opiates. I smoke weed occasionally. I drink once in a while. I have and bad anxiety which I get prescriptions for. I manage these things with no problems, and did before and after my opiate problem. I need to stay away from opiates. And even with that, I was recently hospitalized for a semi-serious surgery and was on opiates for 3 days while in the hospital, but I refused the script they gave me when I was leaving. I needed them. to not be in agony, but I didn't want them when I left that setting. That's why I feel like I can say I'm a former or a covered addict. I now know my limitations, and I'm aware of what happens if I push them. So, I'm happy for everyone who uses the AA/NA model and stays clean, but for everyone who doesn't fit that mold, there are other ways. The trick is finding the pieces that work for you, and the ones that don't. The biggest hurdle is being honest with yourself, because all addicts lie to those around them, but more importantly they lie to themselves. Took his life. He was a musician, started doing electronic music, and got very popular very fast. Signed a record contract, but confided that he never really cared for the music. It's just what he did, because people praised him for it. He was always depressed, and would often mention suicide, but we'd always talk to him about it as a group, and one day he just did it. He was in his mid-20s. His choice was to take a bedsheet and hang himself in his bathroom, which his girlfriend had to wake up and discover. It made me wake up to my own thoughts of suicide and depression. I decided one day to swallow my ego and go to the doctors. First pill I was prescribed changed my life. It may seem like there's no way out, but there is always help. Even if you have nobody, there is help. He had all the friends in the world and felt alone. I was depressed my entire fucking life, and finally got off my ass and tried antidepressants, and it was honestly the best choice I've ever made. I signed up for the shittiest cheapest health insurance I could get, went to the first doctor I was assigned and tried the first pill prescribed and it worked. It may take you more attempts than that, but is it worth it to feel happy? To feel free? To feel light and loosened yourself? Yes it is. With my shitty insurance I get meds for $20 a month. That's dirt fucking cheap for mental health. Look into it if you feel suicidal. It won't solve your problems, but it will prevent you from going down the spiral of depression, and will allow you to seek the help you need. Do it for you. R.I.P. James. One of my high school friends was 2 days away from graduating early and skipping the second half of senior year. But then, a guy who'd been bullying him for years started a fight with him. My friend snapped, stabbed this guy in the back with a knife, and then decided to turn himself into the school administration. He admitted he panicked and thought it would have been worse for him if it got reported. Guy who started the fight got off completely free of charges, and my friend got a felony on his record and 18 months plus in prison. Not to mention the years of probation and thousands of dollars of fees, with additional fees for not being able to pay them off. I'm not saying what he did was right, but I'm saying that school administration completely dropped the ball on this for years, overlooking countless hostile acts, rather than actually dealing with the problem. It's not completely shocking though, considering our school expected you to let yourself get the shit kicked out of you, or run. Explaining that one to the relatives who called me later on that night asking, "Wasn't he your friend?" was a lot of fun. Had a friend who bought an expensive Mercedes. It was kind of a life dream he had for many years. It took all his savings, and also his life insurance to get there, plus a decent credit. When pulling off the dealer's place, he totally wrecked it on the first turn. Paperwork with insurance was still in progress, so they denied paying. He now drives a used old car, and is paying off a credit for a car he drove less than a minute. Edit, to all the people that say it's not possible to get a car without insurance in place. There are two parts of car insurance in Germany. One is mandatory, Haftpflicht, and covers any damage that a driver does to others. You must have this one to legally buy/register a car. For new cars, you very quickly get a temporary card from your insurance company that tells dealers in the DMV that the insurance is there. The other one, Wahlkasko/Steel Casco, is optional and partly covers damage you do to your own vehicle. You don't need this, but then you will have to pay on your own. In said case, the insurance company obviously did pay for the damages he did to others, a fair pole and a residence wall he ran into, but due to fucked up paperwork, I don't know any details here, they did not pay for the car. Edit 2, and yes, it's a bad move by the insurance company to deny payment. but if I were the responsible agent and heard this stupid story, I would probably do the same. Had a friend who did okay in college. Wasn't very smart, B/C student, but was a really popular social guy who was nice to everyone. During undergrad, he dabbled in drugs, a lot of weed, cocaine, LSD, sometimes heroin, and drank a lot. He was by far the most knowledgeable and experienced drug user out of all of my friends. He graduated from college with a political science degree and went to teach English in China. He went for 2 years and came back to USA and struggled to get a salaried real job, so he went back to school to get a master's in Miss. He was really serious this time in school and was making A's. He had an internship lined up at a major corporation in my city. He was barely drinking and wasn't doing any drugs. I was really glad for him because he had a lot of potential in the business world with his personality. Things were looking good. However, one night during the Christmas holidays he hung out with some of his old friends who were in town for the holidays, who were really into hard drugs. Long story short, my friend overdosed on heroin and died. His mother found him in his house dead after no one had heard from him for a few days. Dying is bad enough, but it was really scary because he was so knowledgeable / experienced with drugs that he was the last person I figured would die. Also, years ago I had literally asked him what he thought the most dangerous drug was. I don't